First up, let's talk about the MPs and the pay rise that they've just awarded themselves. Because make no mistake, it's got nothing to do with the Parliamentary Standards Authority. The MPs have made it possible for them to give them a pay rise so that they can't get blamed for paying themselves. Basically, it's the same thing. But they're busting inflation by 0.2%. And we're going to talk to Jerry Hayes now, former Tory MP and barrister, of course, to find out whether he is not as outraged, perhaps, as I am, but is wondering why suddenly he's feeling a bit like one of those footballers from the 70s who wasn't making 81,932 quid for being an MP. Jerry, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Yes, it's a bit weird. I think it's nearly 82,000 now, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. And plus the decent expenses. I mean, that takes you well over 100,000 for most people, even if they're just claiming a little bit of travel here and there.
Well, yeah, I think they're entitled to do that. In my day, we didn't really have too many allowances. I had to buy my own typewriter when I was elected.
Did you?
Yeah. When I was elected in 83, bought my own typewriter. I got a travel warrant, but at election time, you only got a one-way ticket. You weren't allowed to come back.
Right.
Re-elected. So I think we've gone a long way in the right direction, that Parliament shouldn't have the indignity of voting for the money themselves. So you've got an independent body. However,
well, it's a bit like a firewall, isn't it? It's not. I mean, everybody really knows that it's not. It's not. I mean, you know, they give the MPs a pay rise because the MPs ask for it.
But it's interesting if you just put this in perspective. Since 2010, teachers had a pay cut by 10%.
Yeah.
Nurses had a pay cut by 12%. Police had a pay cut by 14.6%, and firefighters had a cut by 10%. What about MPs? What cut do they get, you reckon, Mike?
I would say they went in the opposite direction.
They had an increase of 20%.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't joking when I said, you know, there are those... I mean, Alan Brazil often says this, that, you know, he slightly regrets playing football in the decade that he did. Well, because now people are getting paid $300,000 a week on a regular basis. But,
well, that's just the way it goes. But the interesting thing is, now, if you're going to pay MPs above the rate of inflation, what about staffers? Staffers only got 2%, you know.
Right. And that is entirely wrong, in my view.
That is entirely wrong. It just looks so bad. Now, I know this is the annual sort of MP baiting sport. How much is an MP worth? Well, we don't know. It's whatever.
What do you mean it's an annual sport? Are you suggesting that I've trotted out some hoary old reason to get people to ring into a radio station? That's a disgrace, Mr. Hayes.
Yeah, but everyone else is doing it, so why not? And
no, they won't be doing it the way we're doing it.
Yeah, there'll be lots of outrage calls saying it's an absolute disgrace, but they do get a very generous pension.
They do. And they also get a redundancy payment. And they also, if I'm not mistaken, get a redundancy payment, which is quite handsome, when they lose their seat.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, because there's nothing so X as an ex-MP, and I was lucky I could do other things. There's a lot of people who can't, and I think it's about £30,000. But most people don't get that. But I think the staffers, now that is bad. I think there is a way around all this. Now you've hit over the £80,000, which puts them in the top 2% of all earners in the country. Why not just say, we won't have an independent review body. What we'll do, we'll give them the percentage increase that all public sector workers get.
Yeah.
And that's fair, and that looks right. Whether they'll do it or not is another matter.
But this is the point. You know, why, for example, does the Parliamentary Standards Authority think it's necessary to give them 3.1% when 2.9% would have been inflation, and it would have been fairer, and it would have been much more defensible? Why do they push themselves out there for an extra 0.2 of a percentage point?
Well, actually, it's worse than that, because I looked it up this morning. Inflation is 1.8%.
Oh, it's 1.8, not 1.9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really quite an inflation buster. That's why staff has got slightly above inflation of 2%.
Of 2%,
They don't get pensions. And some of them don't have contracts either.
Right.
It's a very, very unfair system, and someone's going to have to take it in hand, whether Parliament's got the courage to do it. But now you've hit the 80%, which is a lot of money by anybody's.
It is a lot of money, and it's also rather bad timing, given that we've only just really entered a new Parliament. We've got 5 years of Boris Johnson to go with his 80-seat majority. There's an awful lot of MPs who are in there for the first time, and I've met quite a few of them, and I'm quite encouraged to see that a lot of them are sort of young Tories who have got some quite good conservative ideas about how the country should be run.
Yeah.
But they've suddenly leapt into a job which has been very well paid indeed.
Well, some of them can't believe their luck.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe my bad luck when I was elected in 1983. I wasn't expecting to be elected. I was grossing £25,000 a year as a barrister.
Yeah.
Suddenly I discovered my salary was 12,000 quid, which was, I thought, what have I done?
Yeah, but back in those days, did you not have the kind of luxury of then being expected to earn money outside in addition?
I tried it, but it didn't work. because you can't do a barrister's job well, an MP's job well. You really can't.
Right.
You're letting someone down some of the time, and as you're elected public figure, you shouldn't let the people down. So
No. I mean, is it fair to say that it is a much busier job than most people imagine it to be? Because, for example, today there will be very few parliamentarians in Parliament, but they will all be working in their constituencies by and large.
Yeah, and whatever you think of politicians, the public don't think an awful lot of them for all sorts of very obvious reasons. I think most people say they do work hard on behalf of their constituents, whatever party they represent. But this just looks so bad.
And that's the problem.
Until next year.
Because actually, this is not, as you described it earlier, a sort of an MP baiting radio show. What I'm asking people to do is to call me and say, what has your MP done for you lately? And we were already getting calls from people, because I could see them lining up in front of me, from people who say, actually, my MP helped me stay in my house, or actually, my MP helped me do this and that. So we will be looking at what MPs do to see which ones are good, because no doubt there are some very good MPs, but there are also some bloody useless ones.
Yeah, absolutely right. And there are some who just don't tell the truth.
Yeah.
And you see them coming up. You see, this is the difficulty with this government. Boris comes out with a line in the newspaper, or Cummings does in the newspaper, and all ministers are asked questions on shows like yours. What do you think of this?
Yeah.
They don't know whether it's government policy or not, but they're hardly going to slag it off. Otherwise, they upset number 10. That's the trouble about dropping all sorts of little or flying kites in newspapers, which they do, and it just looks appalling.
Yes, well, I mean, we're being told more and more by those who are not in government that we have a very authoritarian government, a government which picks and chooses which television programmes it does and which which newspapers it talks to. But that's what a strong government, I suppose, is able to do. If there was a halfway decent opposition, that might not be the case. But the opposition is so useless that they can pretty much do what they want.
That might change in April.
I very much doubt it.
Because we need scrutiny. And at the end of the day, politicians should be scrutinised by people like you, should be scrutinised by Channel 4 and the Today programme. And the really worrying thing, I don't know whether you've done it on your show yet, is the thought that because of the coronavirus, Parliament's going to be shut for 6 months. Whoa, no way. At a time of national crisis, you do not shut down Parliament.
Well, I'm afraid you may find that you're overruled on that one, Jerry, because we did talk about it the other day. In fact, I predicted it last week because I said the next thing that will happen is they will shut it down. But of course, again, the enemies of democracy, who are the people that tried to stop the government from leaving the European Union, as the British people had asked them to do, are now terribly upset that they won't be able to have a say in what the government does because they won't be sitting in Parliament. They can't have it both ways, can they?
Well, you can, really.
You would say that, being a barrister.
Yeah,
but
can have it both
I'm
ways.
afraid the law is the law, and they can make the laws from somewhere outside without having to travel all the way into Parliament every day.
If you can't ride 2 horses at once, you shouldn't be in the circus.
Well, listen, I'm not in the circus. That's your area. But
No!
let me ask
you. You're a radio presenter.
let me ask you this: as a former Tory MP, I mean, what about the way the Tory party is currently going? Because it seems to be a much happier place than it's been for a very long time.
Well, it couldn't be more miserable than it was last time. The whips are a lot happier.
Yeah.
There seems to be a rebellion on that chart. I can't pronounce it. Is it way hey? I don't know.
Way, yeah.
Way,
no,
whatever.
It's
There's going to be a row over that. The government will win, but it just shows you if you've got an 80 majority, it doesn't mean an awful lot when it comes down to it. Margaret Thatcher, when she was defeated in the leadership, had a majority of 102. That should be something that Boris should be very, very careful. Don't take your majority for granted, because they will turn on you if the opinion polls go sour, and they could do it any minute.
Well, that's absolutely true. But the other interesting thing for me is talking to Tory MPs at the moment. Very soon after the first sort of session of Parliament started, there was the vote on leaving the European Union. The actual Brexit withdrawal bill was voted on. And I think it was Mark Francois I was talking to, and he said, it was a very weird feeling because we all came back and sat down after voting. And somebody said, well, we should win that one. And somebody went, yeah, we probably will. And then what about this other vote? And they were talking about it. And then somebody actually sort of a light went off in their head, and they went, actually, we're going to win all of them because we've got an 80-seat majority. And they haven't had that for such a long time that they've forgotten what it's like.
Yeah. But the other thing is, it means that people will be more likely to rebel because they don't think they can harm the government, and that's what can happen. I actually nearly defeated the government on an issue, my own government, in 1996, I think, 1986.
Right.
when the majority was 140, and I reduced the majority to 4 on a matter of conscience. So you never know.
Those were the days when you had a conscience.
Oh, you should have got one now.
Yeah, now, let me ask you one final question. Your learned friend, Mr. Jolyon Mall, has been let off the hook by the RSPCA, who have apparently said, and after 59 or 60 days of investigating an attack on a fox, which he admitted to, they basically said that it wasn't cruel enough for him to be prosecuted. Well, I mean, I don't know much about the law when it comes to foxes and beating them to death, but it does seem a bit unfair on the fox.
Well, the answer is I always make a point of never commenting on cases that I haven't read the papers on. I don't believe the Daily Mail law reports are something we should have a look at.
It's nothing to do with the Daily Mail.
I don't know the answer. I really don't know the answer.
It's nothing to do with the Daily Mail. The reasoning that the RSPCA have given out is that it's only prosecutable as an offence if it's not actually illegal to kill a fox.
Undue cruelty, I think, to an animal.
If it's undue cruelty. But he beat it to death with a baseball bat.
Well, we don't know.
Doesn't sound very, very nice to me.
No. But did you hear the fox complaint? Of course not.
No, it was dead. But anyway, listen, Jerry, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Jerry Hayes, former Tory MP, a man who, like me, is aware that there are certain drawbacks of being an MP, but also there are some very good things about being an MP. My question to you is, what has your MP done for you lately? Because at the end of the day, that's why they give themselves such a big pay rise. They're supposed to be working not only for you, but they're supposed to be working for the good of the country. They're supposed to be working for the constituents who didn't even vote for them as well. So we want your stories this morning. This is not about bashing the MPs, but they're now making an awful lot of money, nearly £82,000 a year, plus an awful lot of expenses. Some people think there's too many of them. If you are a bad MP, I think somehow we should have a system in place where we can cut their pay until they do the right thing. I quite like Jerry Hayes' idea that they should get the same money and the same pay rises as the rest of the public sector. But as he quite rightly said, almost everybody else in the public sector has seen their pay reduce over the period of time that he was looking at it, and theirs has gone up by 20%. Stuart Jackson texted in to say that he got £17,000 redundancy after 12 years, not 30,000. He says they cut it in half in 2015. So basically, the amounts of money out there for MPs when they lose or when they get kicked out for one reason or another perhaps are not as high as they were. But still, £17,000 redundancy is not bad. A lot of people would love to get a £17,000 redundancy package, but let's talk about that as well.